Today we're going to talk about 3 must-try exotics that are absolute classics for builds, and I'm even branching out and talking about 1 exotic per class, one for Warlock, Titan, and the Super Black Hunter class. And whether you're playing Grandmasters, Raids, or particularly Onslaught, where the right build is borderline necessary, these exotics are going to take care of you, they're going to be fun, and they're potent, and for each exotic we're going to be briefly going over builds for them as well, which I'll have dim links in the description for. The exotics today range from hilarious amounts of damage to extremely high utility and ability uptime, and overall they're just a ton of fun. And since I'm a Hunter main since 2014, feel free to share your better ideas in the comments, because I'm sure those of you more familiar with Titan and Warlock will be able to fill in some of those gaps. That's actually part of the reason I'm making this video today, is to succinctly show off some of the really fun ways to play other classes so you can be inspired to go out and try new things. I recently unlocked Strand on my Warlock because, you know, obviously I have nothing to do, and I've been shocked at just how much fun it is to wield just an army of threadlings, which leads nicely into our first exotic. Warlock's got a very neat little pair of exotic leg armor this last year called Swarmers, and just like modern game releases, Swarmers take bugginess to a whole new level. On its face, if you've never really looked into Swarmers because you don't play Warlock at all, Swarmers look kinda lame. Okay, I mean, unraveling threadlings and extra threadling when you blow up a tangle. Cool, I guess? But it's not until you dig into the subclass and conveniently the artifact mods that you realize the potential and the sheer gravity of synergy at play. It's fantastic. I kinda overlook these because on Hunter and Titan Strand you can't really summon that many threadlings, but that is the Warlock specialty. You can summon threadlings by casting your Rift with the Weaver's Call aspect. You've also got your threadling grenade, of course, and now with Swarmers, destroyed tangles will also unleash another threadling. Then once you dip into fragments, you can use finishers to create threadlings, which makes for 4 rather easy ways to generate threadlings already, and I haven't even mentioned the easiest way yet, Horde Shuttle. Horde Shuttle, a seasonal mod, which is going to be around for another 6 weeks or so, which I mentioned in each of my last 2 videos because it's absolutely insane, will generate additional threadlings by using weapons to damage unraveled targets. And now you probably see the loop forming. Each of your threadlings are going to unravel targets, so as you open fire with Tusk of the Boar or Rufus's Fury or whatever strand weapon you use, it's going to start to generate additional threadlings and spread ridiculous amounts of damage. Unraveling shoots projectiles, shares the damage, but now your threadling army gets taken to another level and self-perpetuates by unraveling additional targets and damaging even more. If you combine it with the Wanderer, your tangles will now suspend targets and threadling kills will generate tangles as well, which at that point Swarmers can play off of and create even more threadlings. There is a cooldown, but it's just another easy way to create more tangles. Swarmers are typically excellent anyways, but combined with Horde Shuttle from the artifact this season, it's just hilarious and so much more fun. You can just absolutely light up hallways with threadlings. The Wanderer also allows your tangles to suspend targets, which I combine with continuity and mind, so unraveling and suspend lasts longer, and then suspended targets return rift energy when you kill them. Now the reason I opt for those 2 fragments is because suspend is just a really helpful tool, especially in Onslaught, just to lock things down for a couple seconds when your teammates die to the same wave of Exploder Shanks for the 3rd time. It just gives you some breathing room, and then that rift energy feeds back into your threadling army, since anytime you cast your rift, you're sending out 3 more. Strand Warlock is a pretty good class for damage. It's got a great super, and being able to spread out even more damage with all the threadlings you got going on, and also take advantage of suspend for area control is really helpful for someone like me who has to use LFG a lot for Onslaught. LFG kind of forces you to wear all the hats, because counting on your teammates isn't something you should really do, and Broodweaver can handle that. Naturally, if you want to amp up your threadlings, just slot on evolution so they travel further and deal more damage. And since you're generating so many more, it just kind of makes sense. The last slot is where it's kind of up to you. Thread of Wisdom for the extra orb when you destroy suspended targets could work for more super energy, but personally I just go with warding so I can take advantage of Woven Mail. Woven Mail just helps with surviving a lot. You don't want to be that one teammate that's dying all the time, leaving your teammates hanging. Also, pro tip, if it's wave 49 and you got jumpy fingers, just take off the rocket. Trust me. Also, if you enjoy build videos, leave a like. It helps out a lot, and if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe here, and then come and hang out on Twitch every Saturday night. And that takes us to our next class, Titans, with Celestial Nightbongs, sometimes referred to as pyroil gauntlets. Pyroil is the pinnacle of solar synergy in action. Something about the animations for this subclass in particular are really satisfying. It's so much fun to play as because you just feel powerful. Whether you're slamming the giant maul or the sliding consecration slam just feels sudden and violent and visceral, you just really feel like you're dealing damage. And even better, it's not just a feeling, because the damage with Nightbonk Titans is whack. First off, we get a mega juiced Burning Maul that you can only swing once but deals ridiculous damage, and a secondary trait that you can use a lot more often with Consecration. Pyroil also allows your Consecration Slam to create flaming cyclones that deal additional damage to your foes. I really enjoy this addition. There's just so much going on with Consecration as it is. Your initial wave will scorch enemies, then the slam will cause ignitions on scorched kills, which you can then certainly augment with fragments like Eruption, and then Pyroil adds on the Solar Cyclone for even more damage and area control. And that last part is something I really appreciate. Area control and locking down lanes is really important in Onslaught. In other modes too, but particularly Onslaught. The ad density and urgency in Legend is just unlike other PvE experiences for the most part. The ability with Consecration to create nearly on-demand ignitions and then a Flame Cyclone to continue dealing damage is fantastic. And if you combine it with something like Soul Invictus, the sunspots you create will also be a source of healing, which I did find to be a little bit of a struggle with this build, so you're probably going to want to go with that. Roaring Flames is definitely an option for the increased damage, but I think the overall utility of sunspots is probably going to serve you a little better. The best way I found to keep this loop going was Ember of Searing, which grants melee energy anytime you defeat a scorched target. That's going to be happening a lot because of Kindling Trigger on the artifact mod. Anytime you're Radiant, which is also very easy to do after getting a few headshots, you're going to be scorching targets with your weapons. And then defeating a scorched target is also going to create a fire sprite from that same fragment, which is going to return grenade energy. Very handy. You're getting both grenade and melee energy just for getting scorched kills. That one fragment helps your ability recharge, but particularly your melee recharge so much. And at this point, you can kind of split off in two different directions with your fragments to either lean into the ignitions more or go for a little bit of survivability. Personally, I would run Eruption regardless, just so the ignitions are larger, but you can also use Ember of Ashes for increased scorch stacks, and then Ember of Char so your ignitions also spread scorching. This way, you're just maxing out the utility of ignitions. And I think that's probably a smart way to go since you're getting a lot of ignitions with your melee, even potentially your weapon if you're using Incandescent. And I actually really enjoyed using Conditional Finality with this build as well, just because you're creating ignitions so often, your whole build is tailored to max out ignition effects. And since every second shot is going to be creating ignitions if you're just landing the pellets, it's pretty effective. Really great for taking down stronger targets like Saboteurs or the Unstoppable champions. And like I mentioned, if you don't want to take the Walking Volcano route, then you can lean more into survivability with Ember of Mercy, which grants restoration when you pick up a Fire Sprite. And while that is short-lived, you can use Empyrean to extend that restoration with Solar Kills, which is a fantastic pairing. If you tee it up right, you can pick up a Fire Sprite, rattle off a bunch of Solar Kills, and then you have around 10 to 15 seconds of restoration. It's kind of like just having a healing rift on your head all the time. It just follows you around. That constant level of healing is extremely helpful in Legend Onslaught when enemies are just pouring in and your recovery doesn't have time to kick in. And I don't mean to gloss over the super damage from earlier either. Outputting high damage like that extremely quickly is very important in Onslaught, especially with Demolitionists spawning on your head. They gotta go quick. Being able to pull out Burning Maul and slam it down a single time for absolutely massive damage and scorching cyclones everywhere is excellent. You got that upfront damage, but you also got some follow-up AoE damage. Really helpful when ads kind of follow up the stronger targets. Now, something fun you can do to layer on the burst damage if you don't want to use Conditional Finality is to use Parasite, which is an extremely high burst damage grenade launcher that you charge over time by getting other kills. Probably not my first recommendation because of reasons. Number one being blowing yourself up, and number two being sending yourself into another dimension with it. Dragon's Breath in the end is probably going to serve you better since you're already taking advantage of ignitions. Otherwise, if you already have teammates running Dragon's Breath, Gallowhorn is always excellent, or any solar linear like Cataclysmic for strong precision damage against stuff like Tormentors is also going to serve you pretty well. Between the ignitions and the constant scorching, sunspots for healing, cranked out super damage, and a really fun, fast gameplay loop, Nightbonk Titans are a really fun choice in a number of activities, but particularly Legend Onslaught. And lastly, we've got more familiar ground for me personally, Hunters. Star Eater's scale is like the Smash Bros. Mario of Destiny, incredibly balanced and mostly effective. In essence, Star Eaters does a couple things. Increase super regen from orbs, overcharges your super up to 4 stacks after it's full, and then grants healing when you cast your super, and if it's fully overcharged to 4 stacks, then you get a really strong overshield on top of that. Now when it comes to modes like Onslaught, which I'm kind of focusing on today, I mentioned it before, but you gotta wear a lot of different hats. Ad clear, strong single target damage, DPS, survivability, really anything under the book, and that can be a lot to ask from a single cool build, but what I find is that Star Eater does a great job of filling in the gaps and smoothing out your build. So for example, I've got my Strand Hunter build I made a video on just a number of days ago. It sports pretty good survivability with Woven Mail, but Star Eaters can really clutch up with the super healing and overshield. A lot of times in Onslaught, I find myself about to get killed and I just panic pop that super. Now I'm good. Full health, overshield's ready to roll like nothing happened. That's really helpful when you're sporting a subclass like Strand or Stasis that isn't going to be directly healing you. My build also has decent damage with the Beyblade and a decent heavy with Galahorn, but sometimes it's important to save that heavy. And with Star Eaters granting 58% extra damage to my super, I can save some of that ammo and just use my super instead. Suddenly Silk Strike goes from feeling like a rope dart to whipping around a mace. It deals excellent damage and really helps you deal with stronger targets like the Demolitionists and the Saboteurs that normally soak up a lot of hits. In a way, it's kind of like budget-friendly DPS. It allows you to save on heavy ammo a little bit, and you're highly mobile as well, which is great for going to and from the ADU on modified rounds like the Shielded Sky Bombers. And with that overshield, it's pretty difficult to get killed. Then you've got the increased super from each orb. And I understand that there are exotics like Orpheus Rig and Shards of Galanor. Those are pretty meta for hunters right now, but those are specific to one subclass and a specific super in that subclass. And sometimes it's nice to branch out and just try other stuff. The increased regen from Star Eaters really adds up, and when your teammates are popping supers often, those giant orbs contribute a ton to your super meter. Personally, I like to use Powerful Attraction to collect orbs just by dodging. I also use that with some healing leg mods that really helps the survivability in my builds, and I have at times generated almost an entire super in a single dodge. It's absolutely wild. The super regen is not to be overlooked. That level of regen feeding into powerful supers like Silk Strike or Golden Gun, Gathering Storm, it's a really powerful tool to have when ammo starts running low. It may not be the flashiest exotic, but it's been kinda cracked ever since it came out, and the super regen plus extra damage makes it worth the trade over many subclass specific exotics. I'd love to say more about Star Eaters, but to be honest, it's not complicated. It just makes your super better and easier to get. It's a total beast. Now, as for the build goes, it kinda does everything. Woven Mail, health regen, orb regeneration, super uptime, high damage, all the good stuff. I actually made a whole build video on it, so feel free to check that out, linked in the description on the end screen. It's a blast. I really think you're gonna enjoy it. There's a lot of layers. You can also find the dim link over there. So I hope in discussing these three exotics, you got to maybe see the power of some of the other classes you don't play as much and be inspired to create some builds of your own. Speaking of which, I always love hearing about your guys' builds, some ideas. Sometimes I kind of toss them into my own and mess around with them, so don't forget to leave your thoughts below. Logging on and trying something different is really refreshing, gives a new spin and a new angle to the same activities, and if things start to feel stale in Destiny, then I'd say either take a break or try something new like a different class. It's really helped me enjoy different modes and activities from different angles. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. We are definitely going to be cranking during the final shake. And I also stream every Saturday night on Twitch, so definitely stop by. It's a good time. As always, thank you so much for watching. Catch you guys next time.